Well, NASA has cleared the shuttle Atlantis for landing tomorrow morning, I think about 6:41, despite astronauts spotting 3 new pieces of debris floating in space.
This is one day after the discovery of 2 other mysterious objects. Kim McIntyre is down at Johnson Space Center.
Pieces of debris floating around close to the shuttle today. NASA wanted to make sure the shuttle was intact and ready to withstand the long and dangerous journey back home. NASA says nothing stood out and was not out of place during the 4.5-hour inspection of the shuttle, but mission managers did an additional survey of the shuttle's protective heat shield anyway. The surveys were initially sparked by a mysterious object floating under the spacecraft yesterday. It was detected shortly after a routine check of the shuttle's steering jets. Now, since Columbia, NASA developed several tools and procedures to safeguard the shuttle while in space. NASA admits they may never know exactly what the unknown objects are, but confirms the shuttle is ready to handle the 3,000-degree temperatures it will meet as it re-enters the Earth's atmosphere.
Over the years, we have chased many of these things, maybe not with the visibility that this one has gotten, and rarely, if ever, been able to pinpoint exactly where they came from, and always finding out that it didn't pose us any hazard.
35,000 miles an hour can cause serious damage to the shuttle.
So what could these things possibly be? I mean, a lot of people are writing in saying satellites.
Pieces off
Could they be satellites? Pieces of satellites?
Well, they're unlikely to be off a satellite because the fact that they're in the same orbit as the shuttle. They're floating along with the orbital. So more than likely it's something that was maybe dropped in the payload bay during the servicing of the shuttle, and during the thruster firings and the flight control checks yesterday, they floated up out of the bay and just started falling off.
But I don't recall seeing this in recent missions. Is this something that happens frequently and it's just not reported?
Occasionally. On my second mission,
in the blackness of space, orbiting around the Earth, is a mysterious, dark object of unknown, and possibly alien origin. The story says it's up there right now, and has been for 13,000 years. Its purpose unknown. Dubbed the Black Knight. This elusive satellite has allegedly been beaming signals towards the Earth for many years. Nikola Tesla was a brilliant Serbian inventor, who spent most of his career in the USA. He was an electrical engineer, and produced works which explored the idea of radio and wireless transmissions. In 1899, Nikola Tesla, with the aid of his financial backer, J.P. Morgan, set up at Colorado Springs an experimental laboratory containing high-voltage radio transmission equipment. The lab had a 200-foot tower for transmission and reception of radio waves and the best receiving equipment available at the time. One night, when he was alone in the laboratory, Tesla observed what he cautiously referred to as electrical actions which definitely appeared to be intelligent signals. The changes were taking place periodically, and with such a clear suggestion of number and order that they could not be traced to any cause then known to him. Instead, he announced that regular signals must be coming from an intelligent outside source.
Undaunted, Tesla continued his wireless power experiments for 6 more months. Late one night, an unusual event took place. Tesla noticed a repeating signal being received by his apparatus. To his own amazement, he believed it was an extraterrestrial communication. In a letter to the American Red Cross, he wrote,
"Brothers, we have a message from another world. It reads, 1, 2, 3.
The press had a field day.
If the mystical 1, 2, 3 was impulsed from Mars, as Tesla says, they certainly showed most excellent taste in choosing Colorado Springs. It is a rule in inventional science. When you're going to tell one, tell a good one. And men have become great in this way. Colorado Springs Gazette.
Though widely ridiculed for his claim, Tesla may have been the first to detect radio waves from space.
I believe that Tesla could have gotten these signals from space. We are getting them today, and these are the radio telescopes. That's what radio telescopes do today, receive signals from space.
At the conference, Tesla announced that he was receiving an electrical signal which appears to be intelligent. The signal was clearly repeated periodically with such a clear suggestion of number and order. This led him to believe that the signal was extraterrestrial communication with aliens. At first he assumed they were originating from Mars.
If in a thunderstorm, the Earth is struck by lightning, the force creates concentric waves which slowly expand to circle the world until they come back to where they started. This proves to us that the Earth's crust is a conductor of electrical energy. Now, if we were to produce large quantities of electrical energy and if we directed it into the Earth's crust, then that energy would travel in concentric waves.
There were rumors you went to Colorado Springs in order to contact Mars, is that true?
It is possible for us to send out waves which can travel around the world. There are waves as well which can travel into space.
How are you going to talk with them?
I never intended to. However, I recorded certain electrical impulses of unknown origin, and these were repeated at constantly timed intervals. It's possible they were a kind of signal from space.
And did you in turn send them a message?
Ask the Martians that question.
But you did send some sort of signal.
A signal which might not be received for 1,000,000 years.
Therefore, Mr. Tesla, you do believe communication with distant worlds may someday be possible.
Perhaps they've been sending us messages for ages, but we aren't aware of it.
Mr. Tesla, what's that big pile of papers down there on the floor?
My file on the work in Colorado Springs.
Can you tell us what's in it?
It's a new electrical system.
This incident was the first of many in which Tesla intercepted what he felt were intelligent signals from space. At the time, it was surmised by prominent scientists that Mars would be a likely haven for intelligent life in our solar system, and Tesla at first thought these signals may be originating from the Mars. He would later change this viewpoint as he became more adept at translating the mysterious signals. Near the end of his life, Tesla had developed several inventions that allegedly could send powerful amounts of energy to other planets. By 1920, Tesla had grown confident that he was able to make sense of the strange radio broadcasts from space. However, soon afterwards, Tesla began to express great concerns about beings from other planets who had unsavory designs for planet Earth. The signals are too strong to have traveled the great distances from Mars to Earth, wrote Tesla. So I am forced to admit to myself that the sources must come from somewhere in nearby space or even the moon. I am certain, however, that the creatures that communicate with each other every night are not from Mars, or possibly from any other planet in our solar system. Today, there are those who believe Nikola Tesla was listening to a transmission from an orbiting satellite of unknown origin. Could the transmissions be coming from the Black Knight satellite? Guglielmo Marconi, an Italian inventor and electrical engineer, known for his pioneering work on long-distance radio transmissions, picked up strange radio messages from space. In London, January 28, 1920. In an interview granted to an editor of Daily Mail, Guglielmo Marconi asserts that the radio telegraph stations often receive radio signals of which nobody until now is successful to discover the origin. They are signals surely sent from great distance, and outside of the terrestrial atmospheric zone because they are at the same time picked up by distant radio telegraph stations, like London or New York. It has not been possible, Guglielmo Marconi says, to decipher some comprehensible message even if it uses a kind of Morse alphabet that are repeated many times. Marconi says that the scientific investigations over the origin of the signals are continuing and that it cannot give some reliable explanation of the phenomenon but not exclude that these radio signals can come from other planets or from the Sun. The Daily Mail closes the interview to Marconi and it wonders if we do not find ourselves already at the best of the greatest discovery that mankind can make, to enter in communication with people of other planets. Also, in the 1920s, amateur ham radio operators around the world were able to receive this same signal.
Still, he cautions that a few reports cannot be so easily explained. It is these reports that interest Donald Keyhoe, sponsor of a theory that is growing in popularity.
After 1 year's investigation, I believe that the flying saucers, seen by veteran airline and Air Force pilots, are objects from another planet. The Air Force itself has officially admitted that flying saucers exist. This statement appears in Project Saucer Case number 75. Not only that, the Air Force has officially analyzed the motives of possible visitors from space. Here is a direct quotation from the official report. Such a civilization might observe that on Earth we now have atomic bombs and are fast developing rockets. In the past history of mankind, they should be alarmed. We should therefore expect at this time above all to behold such visitations.
Donald Edward Keyhoe was an American Marine Corps naval aviator and writer of many aviation articles and stories in a variety of leading publications, and manager of the promotional tours of aviation pioneers, especially of Charles Lindbergh. In the 1950s, he became well known as a UFO researcher, arguing that the United States government should conduct appropriate research in UFO matters, and should release all its UFO files. On Friday, May 14, 1954, numerous newspapers, including the St. Louis Post-Dispatch and the San Francisco Examiner, reported an interesting statement by retired Marine Corps Major Donald E. Keyhoe, who states the Earth is being circled by one or two unknown artificial satellites. The United States government scientists at the White Sands National Monument, he added, were making an effort to locate, chart them, and determine their origin. At the time, neither the Americans or the Soviet Union had the ability to place a man-made object into orbit. On August 23, 1954, Aviation Week magazine ran a story on two satellites that had been found at 400 and 600 miles out in space. They were termed natural satellites, even though this was later deemed a virtual impossibility, and later no such natural satellites were ever claimed. This is taken from the Short Aviation Week article. The Pentagon's scare over the observance of two previously unobserved satellites orbiting the Earth has dissipated with the identification of the objects as natural, not artificial satellites. Dr. Lincoln La Paz, expert on extraterrestrial bodies from the University of New Mexico, headed the identification project. One satellite is orbiting about 400 miles out, while the other track is 600 miles from the Earth. The Pentagon thought momentarily the Russians had beaten the United States to space explorations.
CBS Television presents a special report on Sputnik 1, the Soviet space satellite. Douglas Edwards reporting.
Until 2 days ago, that sound had never been heard on this Earth. Suddenly, it has become as much a part of 20th century life as the whir of your vacuum cleaner. It's a report from man's farthest frontier, the radio signal transmitted by the Soviet Sputnik, the first man-made satellite as it passed over New York earlier today.
In 1953, 4 years before the Soviet Union launched Sputnik 1 into space, an object of unknown origin, orbiting the Earth, was sighted by Dr. Lincoln La Paz of the University of New Mexico. Lincoln La Paz was an American astronomer from the University of New Mexico, and a pioneer in the study of meteors. As more and more reports of unknown satellite sightings trickled in from around the world, the United States Department of Defense appointed distinguished astronomer Clyde W. Tombaugh, best known for his discovery of the dwarf planet Pluto in 1930, to run a search for the mystery object. The mysterious object later became known as Black Knight. The Pentagon never formally released the results of Dr. Tombaugh's study. No more was heard about the object until December 1957. On December 18, 1957, at around 6 p.m., Dr. Luis Corrales, of the Communications Ministry in Venezuela, was taking pictures of Sputnik 2 as it passed over Caracas. When Luis Corrales developed the pictures, he was startled to find that he had captured an unknown object shadowing the Russian craft. The mysterious object showed up as a streak of light because of the short time exposure Corrales had used. When researchers examined the photo, they concluded that the object wasn't a meteor or star. Instead, they determined that it was an unrecognizable kind of intelligently controlled craft that was able to deviate from the path of Sputnik 2, and then return to its side. In 1960, the Black Knight makes another appearance when American newspapers report on an unusual object in polar orbit. By the 1960s, both superpowers, the United States and the Soviet Union, had artificial satellites in near equatorial orbit. By comparison, the unknown object was in polar orbit. That meant the satellite could see every part of the Earth. Neither country admitted to owning it. Polar orbits are often used for Earth mapping, Earth observation, capturing the Earth as time passes from one point, and reconnaissance satellites. This would put the Black Knight in the category of an observational satellite. Astronomers and scientists observing the object calculated its weight to be over 10 tons, which would be at that time the heaviest artificial satellite to orbit our planet. The Black Knight's orbit was unlike any other object orbiting Earth. This is what Robert L. Johnson, director of the Adler Planetarium, had to say about the object. The object, Judson said, doesn't even have the decency to maintain a regular schedule, like any other heavenly or man-made object he's ever seen. We don't know when to watch for it, he says. It appears some nights, and some nights it doesn't. On September 3, 1960, 7 months after the satellite was first detected by radar, it was revealed that an unidentified object had been photographed in the sky over New York by a tracking camera at the Grumman Aircraft Corporation's Long Island factory. The object, which appeared to emanate a red glow, had been seen several times during the preceding 2 weeks, apparently following an east-to-west orbit, whereas most satellites were launched in the opposite direction. That the United States government attached so much importance to these mysterious sightings that they organized a special committee to gather as much information as possible about them. But the committee's findings, if there were any, were kept secret, and the sightings were forgotten. On January 31st, Dark Fence, a Air Force space surveillance system detected 2 passes of what seemed to be an unknown space object. After detecting several passes during the following days, Captain W. E. Berg, commanding officer of Dark Fence, decided that something was circling overhead on a roughly polar orbit. He raced to the Pentagon and in person reported the strange satellite to Chief of Naval Operations Arleigh Burke. Within minutes the news was communicated to President Eisenhower and marked top secret. In the confusion, there was a delay before anyone took the step necessary to positively identify the strange satellite, informing the Air Force's newly established surveillance center in Bedford, Mass. It is the surveillance center's job to take all observations on satellites from all friendly observing centers, both optical and electronic, feed them into computers to produce figures that will identify each satellite, describe its orbit and predict its behavior. Says one top official, explaining the cold facts of the space age. The only way of knowing that a new satellite has appeared is by keeping track of the old ones. Gordon Cooper was an American aerospace engineer, test pilot, United States Air Force pilot, and one of the 7 original astronauts in Project Mercury, the first manned space program of the United States. Cooper piloted the longest and final Mercury spaceflight in 1963. He was the first American to sleep in space during the 34-hour mission and was the last American to be launched alone to conduct an entirely solo orbital mission. On May 15, 1963, Gordon Cooper was launched into space for a 22-orbit mission. On his final orbit, he reported seeing a glowing green shape ahead of his capsule, and heading in his direction. It is said that the Muchia tracking station, in Australia, which Cooper reported this to, was also able to pick it up on radar traveling in an east-to-west orbit. This event was reported by NBC, but reporters were forbidden to ask Cooper about the event on his landing. The official explanation is that an electrical malfunction in the capsule had caused high levels of carbon dioxide, which induced hallucinations. These are the transcripts from the mission. 5:05 and 3 seconds. Have been looking for the flashing beacon. This light's in sight, it is below me. It is quite a brownish, reddish brown, and considerable altitude above the ground. Every time I fire a pitch-down thruster, I get a shower of these little fireflies. The light is flashing now. It's quite bright, quite discernible. It appears to be about 10 to 12 miles away, about the order of a second magnitude star. In the following years, Gordon Cooper makes several public pronouncements concerning his strong belief in the existence of UFOs.
And it trailed along with him for quite a period of time, then tipped up, climbed very steeply away. Was on Jim McDivitt's Gemini 7 mission, where they saw this glint of something metallic off in the distance. And he reported, and nobody had it listed on the ground, so he tried getting a picture of it, but the sun, unfortunately, was glinting off of it so bright, all you got is just a glint. There was no detail on what it was, but never any further sighting at all on it.
Years later, Cooper approached the United Nations with a proposal for a committee that would explore the UFO phenomenon.
Right, now tell me about the letter to the UN.
Well, the letter to the UN was in conjunction with a meeting that I had with Kurt Waldheim and the Security Council of the UN to try to encourage the UN to establish a committee to start comparing notes and data and information and to really look into all of this from an unbiased, neutral point of view.
Here's a quote from your letter. I believe that these extraterrestrial vehicles and their crews are visiting this planet from other planets and are obviously a little more advanced than we are here on Earth. And are you saying that's exactly why governments have been trying to keep this information private, because of that obvious advancement?
Very possibly, right.
In 1973, in an article in Spaceflight, the magazine of the British Interplanetary Society, Duncan Lunan, an astronomer and science fiction author, said he had identified and deciphered a hidden radio message sent by an alien space probe that had been caught, but overlooked in the late 1920s by a collaboration of Norwegian and Dutch researchers who were studying the long-delayed echo effect. Published along with an accompanying editorial disclaimer, Lunan maintained that the putative message came from an object at the L5 point in the same orbit as the Moon, sent by the inhabitants of a planet orbiting Epsilon Bootis. Duncan Lunan, who had conducted this research, believed the alien satellite had been in orbit in the solar system for over 12,000 years. He believed its purpose was to intercept and return signals at delayed intervals so that eventually scientists on Earth would realize what was happening. Writing in 1973, Lunan believed the decoded intervals also gave out the following information: our home sun is Epsilon Bootis. It is a double star. We live on the 6th or 7th planet, counted from the sun, which is the larger of the two. Our 6th planet has 1 moon. Our 4th planet has 3, and our 1st and 3rd planets 1 each. Our satellite is in orbit around your moon. The claim was reported in Time and the CBS Evening News.
When start, Endeavour's onboard computers have primary control of all the vehicle's critical functions. T-minus 20 seconds. 15. T-minus 13 seconds. 10. 9. 8. 7. 6. We have a go. Main engine start. 4. 3. 2. 1. We have booster ignition and liftoff of the Space Shuttle Endeavour, continuing the union of U.S. and Russian space endeavors.
(1998). The crew of the Space Shuttle Orbiter Endeavour photographed an unusual object in low Earth orbit. When the Space Shuttle Endeavour made its first flight to the International Space Station on flight STS-88, astronauts aboard the Endeavour took many photographs of this strange object. The photographs were made widely available to the public on the NASA website. But soon, the photographs all disappeared. They reappeared sometime later, with new URLs, and with various descriptions explaining them all away as pieces of debris or space junk. The photographs were of high quality and unmistakably showed some type of craft. These are the photographs taken by the Endeavour. On October 7, 2014, Expedition 41 flight engineers conducted a spacewalk outside the International Space Station to relocate a failed cooling pump and to install a power cable device designed to provide backup electrical capability to the station's rail car system. In the background, beneath the astronauts, suddenly, a mysterious craft appears, and hovers for a few seconds. This event was captured on NASA's live camera feed. Could this mysterious craft, hovering in the background, be the Black Knight satellite?